Welcome to Crime Curio, the channel where we explore the dark and mysterious side of human nature. There's another real story of a murder of Lady Ashley Benson by Crime Curio. The worst creature of the world, which is produced by the god, is humans. They kill their own member, which never be killed by other species on this earth. Here is another example of Ashley Benson, how he becomes the part of human trafficking. I will tell you people briefly. Ashley Benson never seemed to be unhappy until she was 13 years old. She moved from Montana, where she lived with her mother, to the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, where she lived with her father, Michael, and stepmother, Jody. She had amazing relationships with both of them and soon began to truly love her stepmother. Although the move to Portland was a big adjustment for Ashley, it ended up being a good one for her. She flourished, loved being outside, and made lots of friends at school. Her friends loved her for her laid-back personality, infectious laugh, and kindness. One of Ashley's friends remembers that she was one of those people who would give you the shirt off her back. Early in her life, she was fallen in love with Morlin at the age of 17, and she gives a birth to a baby boy. Ashley and Marlon attempted to raise the child together despite their young age, and at first, everything looked to be going well. However, in 2008, after finishing school, they moved in together, and things became challenging for the young family when they were left on their own. Ashley's kid continued to live with Ashley, but she had to give up her dream of going to college in order for them to be financially independent. The young couple was unable to handle the difficulties and eventually divorced. In this situation, she found herself in was extremely difficult, but she overcame it. She found housing for herself, and her son took on any odd jobs she could find. Over the course of the next few years, the young woman gradually got back on her feet. Despite her youth, she must have felt like something was missing from her life because she was still very young. Marcus Giles eventually made his way into Ashley's life. The two moved in together in Vancouver, Washington, and began dating. Although Ashley's family was first happy to learn about the new man in her life, they soon noticed changes in her. Previously very outgoing, Ashley preferred to keep the specifics of her new relationship private, so only very worrying rumors about it reached them. Ashley was the one who paid for all the expenses and the rent for the apartment, but Marcus did all in his power to keep her away from her friends and family and to prevent her from using their automobile. Stated differently, the man was controlling Ashley's finances while telling her what to do. Ashley's parents attempted to bring up this issue during their infrequent meetings with their daughter, but they were unable to take significant action because Ashley was of legal age. In actuality, things were much worse, and Ashley's parents learned about it in September 2013 when the scared girl called her father and sobbed. She told Michael that Marcus had attacked her and that she was stuck in the bathroom and couldn't escape. Marcus then threatened to hurt Ashley if he didn't free his daughter right away. When Michael arrived in Vancouver, Ashley and her son had already managed to escape the apartment through the window, but it was now evident to him that his daughter was experiencing relationship violence. She had cuts on her face, a bruisey under her eye, and a split lip. He had contacted the police after speaking with the young man. Ashley's family persuaded her to at least take a break from Marcus, and at times it appeared like she was prepared to do so. However, shortly everything went back to its original location, and Ashley kept living with Marcus. However, months went by with nothing changing, so Marlon's father started to worry about Ashley's decisions. He went to court to get custody of the child, and the judge decided in his favor. Meanwhile, Ashley's family was worried that their daughter was involved in something they were unaware of, and sadly, their suspicions were correct. 2014's Christmas arrived. While the young woman arrived to offer gifts to her relatives, Marcus brought her, but he stayed in the car and didn't even go inside the girl's parents' house. Ashley's son spent time with Marlon and his family. Ashley appeared to be in a good mood, but she couldn't stay long. She explained that they were going to watch a movie with Marcus and possibly some friends and have a quiet evening before leaving. The rest of Ashley's family spent the remainder of the holiday as normal, not even realizing that they had a cause for concern. Marcus couldn't reach Ashley, the young man told them when he called them the following morning. Michael and Jod were aware that Ashley frequently let her phone run out of battery and that she never kept track of time. They were certain that this was one of those instances, but they continued to call their daughter in an attempt to get through to her. As time went on, their worries increased, and it was at that very moment that they received a call that not only rocked their world, but also provided an explanation for why they thought Ashley was keeping something from them. The staff at the DoubleTree Hotel in Portland was going through a different kind of crisis, while Michael and Jod were growing more and more nervous a few kilometers away. The morning began normally during the busy holiday season, but everything changed suddenly at 11 a.m. The hotel staff found that a young woman was found dead in the stairwell on the 8th floor, right behind the door. When detectives arrived, they saw that the woman was dressed improperly for the chilly winter, that is, in dark pants and a white blouse, without any shoes or socks, and that she had no bags, phones, or documents with her. It was obvious that the woman could not be helped any longer. She had no visible injuries other than a scratch on her neck that suggested she hadn't fallen down the steps, but had instead been strangled. Police concluded she was a hotel guest and that her items must have been left in her room. This supposition would soon be validated. They were also drawn to the young woman's nails, which were obviously freshly manicured for the holidays. However, the majority of the nails on her left hand were broken, and her left index finger had no nails at all. The fact that the police were unable to locate any nails close to the victim's body led them to believe that the victim had fought her assailant ferociously. However, the murder did not take place in the stairwell. After consulting with hotel personnel, the investigation encountered a snag that no one could recall. As far as they knew, no one who fit the victim's description had checked in or out. They also discovered that the building was undergoing the installation of a new surveillance system, and the cameras weren't working yet, so the police were forced to use antiquated techniques without the use of video evidence, without any other choices. Since the hotel was almost full on the holiday, and there were 10 floors to cover, the officers began by going room to room, knocking on doors and chatting with guests. This was a time-consuming and difficult task because the murderer was probably trying to move the body as little as possible to avoid drawing attention from potential witnesses. Although most guests used the elevator, staff members could have used the stairs. Fortunately, the officers didn't have to go through every hotel room because the front desk staff remembered that a woman had been calling them. Officers asked the staff to check the registration log and discovered that room 715 was registered to a Chris Yun. She had inquired about her friend that morning and knew that he was sleeping in that room with a man named Chris. Chris Yun arrived a day early and asked to check in earlier. He was granted permission to do so, paid in cash, and left before the body was found. Chris Yun had reserved the hotel for December 26th. By failing to properly check out by leaving the keys at the front desk, this circumstance presented an intriguing a chilling discovery was made by crime scene investigators while they were taking pictures of the scene, an acrylic nail that matched the one found on the unidentified victim. The reason this was possible was because the man had left the room on his own, making it impossible for them to obtain a search warrant in his name because the room became public property after he left. Fortunately, the hotel decided to fully cooperate with the police and allowed them to inspect the room. Now that they were certain they were moving in the right direction, investigators increased their suspicions. They focused on Chris Yun and learned he resided in a Bellevue, Washington multi-apartment building. They also checked to see if any calls had come in from room 715 and discovered that, according to a Backpage website advertisement, another lead had been made from the room. This website frequently included advertisements from women providing escort services, and it turned out that the woman, Veronica, was the one in question. The victim discovered on the stairway was identical to the photographs in the advertisement. Although it seemed unlikely that she would identify herself as Veronica, the floor-by-floor search had yielded complete results next to an ice cream vending machine, so her identity would not be a mystery for long. Officers discovered a pocketbook containing papers bearing the victim's picture and name, Ashley Renee Benson. The family had been worried about Ashley's relationship with Marcus, but it turned out that she had far more difficulties in life. They couldn't understand why she hadn't come to them with her problems, given that her secret nightlife came as a surprise to them. Detectives delivered the news to Ashley's family, who were devastated. They had to confront not only their daughter's death, but also the fact that she had led a double life. They knew that Ashley had been planning to watch a movie with Marcus, but they also suggested that the detectives talk to Marlon. Marcus Marlon was promptly eliminated as a suspect because Ashley was killed on Christmas Day, and he could provide evidence of having spent the day with his family. He knew that Ashley had been providing escort services, which is why he had been fighting for custody of their son, and the judge had decided in his favor. She reasoned that if Ashley was unable to make decisions for herself, she wouldn't be able to do the same for her young son. Though it was like talking to a brick wall, the judge acknowledged Ashley's intelligence and tried to reach out to her, explaining that leading such a lifestyle often had negative consequences. On the other hand, it was understandable why the family suspected Marcus of mistreating Ashley and controlling various aspects of her life. Investigators discovered that Marcus had previous run-ins with the law, including assault charges. He said that after Dr. Ashley dropped him off at the hotel, he spent some time playing video games at home, but no one could verify this. Thus, his alibi wasn't as strong as Marlon's, but before the investigators could process this fresh information completely, they had another lead, and it was an amazing one. They received a call from the hotel. When the detectives arrived at the hotel, Chris Yun had just checked in again. The man was leaving his room when they detained him. He was confused and agreed to go to the police station, but as soon as they started questioning him, the detectives realized something wasn't right. He appeared genuinely shocked that the police were considering him to be involved in a murder. Despite the fact that everyone in the nation was celebrating Christmas, he had plenty of witnesses, including family and friends, who could attest to the fact that he was at home in Bellevue, Washington. He also had a ton of photos that supported his account, and he insisted that the police take his fingerprints and DNA. He had no idea who Ashley Benson was, and most importantly, he hadn't been anywhere near the hotel until that day, December 26th. Chris Yun, a DJ, revealed that he had traveled to Portland for work with his fiancée. They had reserved the room for December 26th, 2 months in advance. The detectives were perplexed because all the evidence pointed to him as the murderer. But Chris Yun couldn't have possibly been in 2 places at once. As they were about to release their primary suspect, one of them suddenly had an epiphany and asked the man if he happened to know someone by the same name by pure coincidence. Chris answered immediately, "No, but..." At which point he stopped, realizing that another Chris Yun lived in Bellevue in the same apartment building. The investigators couldn't believe such an unbelievable coincidence. They pressed for more information and discovered that the man who arrived in Portland on December 25th had shown his driver's license bearing the name T-Bum Chris Yun. The 2 men weren't related, and their last names were pronounced similarly but spelled slightly differently. The final names weren't spelled correctly, but he collectedly claimed that it was a typo. The hotel staff didn't find it odd, so he paid with cash and made his way to his room. When the police searched the area and found Ashley's phone in a trash can about a block and a half from the hotel, they found a ton of messages sent by Chris to Ashley. The messages revealed that Chris had been Ashley's regular client for several months and that he had called and messaged her dozens of times on Christmas Day alone. This provided the detectives with even more incriminating evidence. But even before she passed away, tensions between them had been rising. In part, this was due to money, but in another, Chris had become more and more possessive of Ashley, demanding that she give up her current way of life and become his girlfriend. Chris showered Ashley with expensive gifts and lavish restaurant outings, and shortly before she was killed, he demanded that she not be in relationships with any other men. I will explain everything before you read my message. I'm determined to make up for all the time you spent on me before you accused me. I want you to know that you violated our agreement by posting a new ad, and even though I forgave you, I found other ads from this email that clearly showed Ashley had promised Chris that she wouldn't post escort ads anymore. That's how Chris answered her email. However, Chris had realized that she had tricked him. At this point, the investigators were certain that they had not only identified the murderer, but also comprehended his motivation. They surmised that the night of the murder, Chris had insisted that Ashley stop escorting him permanently, but she had refused. In a fit of rage, he strangled Ashley and left her body on the staircase. No one knew where Chris was, and he wasn't at his Bellevue apartment, which he had rented only a month prior and was almost completely devoid of furniture. Chris's parents thought he was attending college. Detectives want to check into another hotel, where he was found. He was sweaty and had multiple scratches on his face and neck. When the clerk asked him what had occurred, he explained that he had gotten into a fight with his family and that he needed somewhere to go. Chris decided to pay with cash, so instead of being granted a room, he called a cab and checked into another hotel in Portland. When the police tracked down Chris's cell phone and eventually secured a search warrant, they arrived at the hotel too late, as Chris had already escaped. However, while in the hotel, he had called other women who offered services of an escort. Studying Chris's life, the detectives learned that he frequently took Amtrak trains between Washington and Oregon. This proved to be one of the last missing pieces that would allow them to capture him about 2 weeks after Ashley's murder on January 7, 2015, and the investigators were now concerned that if they didn't act quickly, they might have 2 murders on their hands. On that same day, investigators learned that Chris had checked into another hotel in the Portland area and had bought a ticket to travel to Washington. As they approached the hotel, the detective noticed Chris Yun exiting the building and getting into a taxi. They hurried inside and asked the clerk if he knew the taxi driver and if he had the driver's phone number. The clerk called the driver and politely inquired as to where they were headed. The police couldn't believe it when they found out that Chris Yun was returning to the crime scene. Some murderers enjoy going back to the scene of their crimes to relive the emotions they felt during the act. Sitting in the car, they thought about his motives, though it's more likely that he just wanted to get Ashley's purse back, which the police had already located given how quickly and incident-free Chris entered and exited the hotel. He then got back into the taxi and drove directly to the train station, where he was surrounded by police. "How did you locate me during the interrogation?" was the first thing he said to them. Chris called Ashley after seeing an advertisement, and although he did want her to be his girlfriend, he denied being obsessed. Chris described their encounter on December 25th and acknowledged that they had argued about money. Chris behaved quite calmly, politely, and even modestly. He admitted that he had always found it difficult to communicate with women. But as soon as the cops started probing him about the murder, he snapped and insisted on having a lawyer. What was especially intriguing, though, was that Chris brought up Marcus, according to Chris Yun. Ashley was not at all in love with Marcus. In fact, he was the one driving Ashley's escort business, controlling her both physically and emotionally, and pressuring her to engage in it. Even while it could have appeared like Chris Yun was trying to place the blame elsewhere at this point, he wasn't the only one who was telling the police this kind of thing. Polly, It's obvious that Ashley was a victim of human trafficking because some of her friends who were aware of her employment also knew of Marcus's involvement in it. People like Marcus are known as Romeo pimps because they pose as boyfriends while manipulating vulnerable girls, many of whom are young single mothers, into falling in love and then forcing them to work for them. Although it can be difficult to substantiate these claims, Ashley herself acknowledged as much during a custody hearing. Nevertheless, despite all of the foregoing, there was no proof that Marcus was directly responsible for Ashley's death. A few months prior to her death, she was informed that the money she made paid for all of her and Marcus's expenses, including rent and a car, the very vehicle she was forbidden from driving. At first, Marcus denied any involvement in Ashley's work, but over time, he changed his mind, eventually identifying Trafficking and admitting that he had driven Ashley to the hotel the night before Ashley was murdered. Unfortunately, he treated Ashley like his property, treating her like the thousands of cash Trafficking occasionally gave her, up to $5,000 at a time. Chris didn't rule out the chance that he wasn't dead set on killing Ashley, but he felt he had the right to tell the investigators what Ashley should do when he got to the hotel that night. Therefore, the police theory states that he either used his booked room number during the search of his apartment and phone, or somehow discovered that the other Chris Yun was coming to Portland and decided to use it, possibly even framing him as a namesake for the murder. The authorities discovered evidence linking him to the illicit drug trade, which clarified where he obtained the thousands of dollars he frequently provided Ashley.T. Bom Yun, or as he chose to call himself, consented to a plea deal in 2017 despite having no work and his parents thinking he was a student. At first, he insisted on his innocence and said he would challenge the allegations against him. Chris Yun was given an 18-year prison sentence after entering a guilty plea to first-degree involuntary manslaughter. Though it's unclear exactly why he wasn't charged with any drug-related offenses, it's possible that these were requirements of his plea agreement. The Benson family filed a lawsuit against the owners of the hotel and the website where Ashley's advertisements were posted because the accusations of human trafficking against Marcus Giles were not proven in court. After the Department of Justice banned the Backpage website due to its facilitation and promotion of human trafficking, Ashley's relatives alleged that these organizations' failure to conduct business in a way that would prevent human trafficking eventually led to Ashley's murder. Regretfully, the authorities found that Ashley's circumstances may have continued for 4 years prior to her passing. She was seeing someone else. Latrell Poston, who was subsequently accused of trafficking in persons detectives, found that Latrell, who was 21 years old at the time of his sentence of almost 25 years in jail, had treated his victims like Marcus had. Latrell also pretended to be Ashley's lover, and even after his incarceration, Ashley had continued to send him earnings from her work, even though it wasn't always voluntarily. For instance, according to court documents, on August 11, 2011, Latrell called Ashley and asked where she was. She replied that she was getting her nails done at a salon. He then yelled at her, threatening to beat her mother. How could she be so close to the prison and not bring the money? What was going through her mind? Michael Benson, Ashley's father, questioned what they said to her to make her do all of these things or to keep quiet about it. Following their daughter's death, other young ladies who were victims of human trafficking frequently called Michael and Jod, seeking answers to their own concerns. The girls believed there was no way out and that they would eventually perish as well. Jod replies, "I tell them, I know you were threatened, but look where it got our daughter, didn't she?" It's one of those cases that makes you feel conflicted for a variety of reasons. On the one hand, it's fantastic that detectives and prosecutors work together to find the killer and secure his conviction. On the other hand, it's depressing that, despite Ashley having a loving family who genuinely cared about her and wished the best for her, The majority of the men in her life treated her like a tool to be used. You have to wonder if all the criminals involved in this case received justice. This video is based on true crime stories and facts from reliable sources. If you are interested in crime stories, mystery stories, or crime documentaries, please subscribe to our channel Crime Curio and hit the bell icon to get notified of our latest videos. We upload new videos every week on various topics related to crime, mystery, and justice. Thank you for watching this video, and please leave a comment below to share your thoughts on this case. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you next time.